Hello, everyone. Welcome into Coach Craig's Sports. This is the Monday night football game, looking at the single game DraftKings slate. Overall, tonight's game is between the Bengals and the Browns. Obviously, we're breaking this down a little bit earlier on in the day, so if you guys are here, if you have any questions, doesn't look like anybody at this point in time, but feel free to leave them in the comments. If you're watching this on replay, feel free to comment down in the comments below as well. Any questions that you may have. Obviously, I am not alone today, which is a little bit new. Oops, I didn't even want to bring that one up. Killing myself here. So we have Mr. Smoky Hell NFL over here. So take a minute to introduce yourself, what all you're working on, and all that good stuff.
Honestly, not working on much these days. My wife is a full-time student in school, and I have a 4-year-old who is as crazy as I am. So anyone who knows me knows the level that extends to. So when I can, I spend the little time I have maybe throwing together some reaction videos, because honestly, those take 2 seconds to do, as opposed to the hours and hours it takes to create the football episodes for not as much payoff. But anyways, that's what I'm working on these days. But I'm just having fun, baby. It's Halloween. It's like my favorite day of the year. I love Halloween. I love it. It's a day that revolves around dressing up, being crazy, and candy, chocolate. How can you go wrong with that? You got a hole in your soul. Jesus.
My favorite day is the day after, when all the Halloween candy's half off.
Now that's a good tip right there, kids.
Yep. Or even, there's a lot of days like that too. If you do it right, you got like after Christmas, after Valentine's Day, after Easter. Yep. Easter's the big one for me, but get them little chocolate marshmallow eggs and whatnot. So typically, if you haven't been here before, what we do, go through the inactives, go through some of the pricing on DraftKings, and then kind of build a couple lineups together. Not quite as prepared today since it's earlier on in the day for the lineup part, but we'll be talking through a couple different ones in general. Yeah, obviously there is no inactives because it's not at least an hour and a half before the game time, so we just have an injury report for today. So that's kind of what I got brought up on the screen at this point in time. The Browns, just going through this injury report real quick. Pharaoh Brown's questionable. He was dealing with a concussion, but looks like he'll play, question mark. That's kind of important just because David Njoku is not playing today. He's out with an ankle injury. Harrison Bryant's going to be the main tight end. Oddly enough, all three were on the injury report this week, but Harrison Bryant did practice in full all week. Pharaoh Brown's kind of the big one. We'll see if he's out there on inactives. He could be a cheap punt play. If he doesn't end up playing, then they're probably going to promote Miller Forrestal, a second-year undrafted free agent out of Alabama, who's actually a pretty good blocker and not a terrible tight end. Could be an interesting punt play there as well. Let's see who else we got here real quick. Joe Haig, backup offensive lineman, out with a concussion. His thing doesn't even make sense. He was limited on Wednesday, full practice on Thursday, and then didn't practice at all on Friday. I'm like, that doesn't even make sense. We're not going to talk about that one. Greg Newsome, corner, is dealing with an oblique injury. He's listed as questionable. If he doesn't play, they are very depleted at corner because Denzel Ward's out with his own concussion. Greedy Williams is questionable, but he's been sick all week. So it could just be Greedy Williams, Martin Emerson, and then whoever they throw in the slot in that situation, which that'd be kind of interesting to see if Newsome doesn't play, because let's see. Then if Newsome doesn't play, Tyler Boyd is going to look very, very good tonight. That's all I got to say about that.
Absolutely. Now, has Greedy been sick, or have they just been kind of pulling him back a little bit, making sure he doesn't injure himself in practice because he is a potential trade candidate coming up?
Well, he is a little bit of a trade candidate, but then you got the fact that all the other corners are kind of banged up right now too. So maybe a little bit of everything, you know. Wyatt Teller, the guard, is out though with his calf injury once again. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah dealing with a knee injury, hasn't practiced all week. He is questionable, so he probably ain't going to play either. But they did just get Deion Jones active last week, so that is something. I believe Jacob Phillips went on IR this week too, so we could see a lot of Deion Jones and a lot of Sione Takitaki this week. Tonight. If that's the case, maybe Hayden Hurst looks a little better. We'll have to see, though. This is where the inactives are going to kind of come into play, just because we got a couple of questionable guys there. Go down to the Bengals. Obviously, Jamar Chase is out. He's dealing with supposedly a hairline fracture in his hip, out 4 weeks, maybe more. Who knows at this point in time? They are not putting him on IR because they have a week 10 bye or something like that, I think it is. So it was kind of stretched it out to 5 weeks. And then Stanley Morgan, one of the reserve wide receivers that could have played in his place, is out with a hamstring injury. Josh Tepo, one of their rotational defensive tackles, is out, which probably doesn't matter too much overall. DJ Reader's still on IR, so they're a little bit depleted there, but a lot of guys playing a lot of snaps there. So if somebody else went down, it could be impactful. And then Eli Apple, we were just talking about him before the show. He is doubtful. I put in my notes last week that I thought he got benched because I couldn't find anything about him actually getting hurt. Cam Taylor-Britt played most of the game afterwards last week. He was a rookie second-round pick, I believe, out of Nebraska. Played a little bit all over at Nebraska. Still a little bit raw. So whoever he lines up on, which I probably should have that up already, could be a little bit of an advantageous matchup too as well, just because it's going to be either Amari Cooper or Donovan Peoples-Jones either way. And both of those guys have had very good weeks so far this season. Both have had pretty large target shares because it's really just the two wide receivers, and then a lot of David Njoku this year, and he's not playing this week. So we're going to get out of this injury report. We'll go over DraftKings in a minute here. Bring that up. What we typically do is go through the pricings, talk through some of the players, kind of where their projected ownership is according to runthesims.com, especially from the captain perspective, because if you haven't played DraftKings before, the captain costs you 1.5 times more. I like to look at the regular pricing because you play 5 guys at regular price. You only play 1 guy at captain price. Some people like to do it different, but that's the way I do it. And it's not that hard to figure out a time and a half. I'm still bringing this up over here on the side. So schedule. Let me see if I can find Amari Cooper real quick. Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones. So it would be Amari Cooper going up against Cam Taylor-Britt, but the Bengals have been known to kind of use their corners based more on matchups, not completely shadowing, but like if it's a more physical wide receiver, a lot of times Awuzie would go against him, and if it's more of a quicker wide receiver, Eli Apple would go against him, just kind of depending on the matchup. So that is something to kind of monitor there. I would assume that Awuzie would just be on Amari Cooper more times than not tonight, and then Donovan Peoples-Jones would be with Cam Taylor-Britt a little bit. But we'll just have to see how that all plays out overall. In terms of this pricing stuff here, so Joe Burrow is going to be the most expensive. He's $11,400. It's really not a bad price tag for him because we've seen quarterbacks get up $12,000 or more in recent slates. So I would say he's pretty fairly priced overall. Cleveland matchup could be pretty advantageous without some of these defensive backs that they could be missing tonight or already missing. Joe Burrow comes in 16% in that captain spot. That's a pretty healthy share, but it's probably warranted overall. Are you expecting a big night from Joe Burrow tonight?
I think there's some matchups he could exploit, but I think Mixon's going to absolutely smash.
That is something that could definitely happen. The defensive tackles for the Browns have been really, really bad against the run. I think
Yes.
I haven't looked at it in the most recent weeks, but about 2 or 3 weeks ago, they were talking about Taven Bryant and Togiai and somebody else that was playing defensive tackle for them. And they were like among the bottom 5% rated according to PFF at stopping the run. So could be a very good matchup for Mixon. Obviously, a lot's going to depend on that Bengals offensive line, which is kind of taking a little bit longer to come together and mold more than people thought.
Yeah, because they're just bottom 5 and bottom 6 right now in rushing touchdowns and red zone attempts allowed.
Yeah, and I think Mixon has 2 rushing touchdowns on the year because he got one last week. But overall, it's not been the easiest on him. I know a lot of people have talked some crap about Joe Mixon, but he's been a guy that's been good at creating yards. It just hasn't been quite there as much this season. We'll see if that changes in tonight's game. Joe Mixon, we're already talking about him, so we might as well just skip over Nick Chubb real quick and talk about Joe Mixon. He's $9,400, pretty fairly priced, getting about 15 fantasy points per game so far. He's 15% in that champion spot according to Run the Sims projected ownership. That is a pretty healthy amount. So between him and Burrow, that's almost a third of the projected ownership. If you're playing, like a cash game, if you're playing a single entry, I'm not afraid to go there. But if you're playing in like a big GPP with a lot of different entries or multiple entries, maybe I get away from those guys just a little bit. Nick Chubb is the other guy that was sandwiched in between there. Nick Chubb, $10,400. He's obviously been pretty amazing so far this year.
Touchdown
And,
machine.
He's 10% projected in the champion spot. That could be really good. That could be really bad. Just kind of depending on how his night shakes out. The Bengals actually have been pretty good on defense this year. I believe they were top 10 in DVOA against the pass and the run this year. So could be a tough matchup. But obviously it's Nick Chubb. He can kind of break off a long run at any point in time as well. Mm-hmm. So, and he's one of those guys on the Browns, like even if you're not playing him in the champion spot, he's going to be very popular in the flex spot because he's going to get workload. He's going to get you some fantasy points. As opposed to some of these other guys on the Browns, it's like, well, Jacoby Brissett should get you double-digit fantasy points. Amari Cooper should get you double-digit fantasy points, but like there's a chance that they don't at the same time. So obviously with DFS, you have to play at least one player from one team. A lot of people are going to be Bengals heavy today. Nick Chubb's probably going to be pretty popular as the sole Browns player, or if you're playing just a couple. Let's see. Jacoby Brissett was next up. He's $9,200. It's really not a bad price for a quarterback, but how low is the floor on Jacoby Brissett tonight? Is it, 8 points? How high is the ceiling too? Is it 18 points? So that's kind of the big thing with him. Just how good can he be overall? He's not terrible for his price tag. I'm just looking at what his ceiling has been so far this season. So his highest point is 17.9 DraftKings points this year. And that was against Pittsburgh, who's not very good on defense. So you're probably looking at a 16-point ceiling there, which at $9,200 isn't terrible. He's 4% projected in that captain spot. A lot of times I'll like building different lineups too, where I use both quarterbacks or one quarterback in the captain spot and then use the other one in a different captain spot later on in a different lineup. So stacking the quarterback with some of their wide receivers. Sometimes these quarterbacks that don't look too good, sometimes they work out too. Andy Dalton just, 2 Thursday nights ago? He had the 4-touchdown game. Yep. And that was my best lineup because I had Andy Dalton with a bunch of his receivers. So sometimes they ain't going to look too pretty with Jacoby Brissett, but you're not going to get too many outlier games where he's getting 2 touchdowns or more. Like that's pretty much that at the end of the day. He's got a couple in his career, but I wouldn't bank on it. But with single game DFS, you've got to find ways to get different. You got to build your storyline of however you want to say this game's going to go. And there's 10 different ways that the game can go. Maybe one of them is where Jacoby Brissett gets 3 touchdowns. Probably not as likely for that to happen. So he's probably more likely to get 1 or 2 and probably throw 1 or 2 interceptions as well. So that is something that's definitely in play. I think one of the interesting things tonight too is you could, if you're going to play a defense, it's probably going to be the Bengals defense, but you could still play the Bengals defense and Nick Chubb together because Nick Chubb can still have a decent game. And the Bengals defense could still get a pick 6 for a touchdown. So that is something to factor in. Let's see. T. Higgins was next. He's $8,000, which is really cheap because if you knew Jamar Chase wasn't playing this game, T. Higgins probably would be like $10,000. So he's going to have a large target share. He's a very, very good wide receiver. I think people underrate how good a wide receiver he is just because you got Jamar Chase playing on the opposite side of him too. Obviously, there is a lot of factors that go into all that, but he's a very good wide receiver in his own right. There's very depleted corner unit for the Browns potentially tonight, but he is 20% projected in the champion spot or the captain spot. So it's going to be a very, very chalky play overall. He is the highest projected guy in that slot, which makes sense because he's cheaper than he should be. But there's also the chance that he has the big game. Maybe there's a chance Mixon has the big game. Tyler Boyd could have the big game too. Tyler Boyd's at 10%. He's right below him. I'm not sure. We got Amari Cooper between him on the list, but Tyler Boyd's $6,400. So he's also priced like Jamar Chase is not playing in this game. So it kind of depends, like, who would you rather have between Tyler Boyd and T. Higgins tonight?
I mean, the attention's going to be on Higgins. Like I said, I think Mixon is going to smash this game. So if you're choosing between the two, I mean, there's so much projected ownership on T. I would sway the other way, go towards Boyd. Save a little money on that, go for another play.
There's a lot of weeks I taste Tyler Boyd this week or a lot of games that I've chased him so far this season. He could have a very good matchup in the slot if Greg Newsome does not end up playing in this game with his oblique issue, or if he's limited in any way whatsoever in this game. So there is opportunities for Tyler Boyd. I would not be surprised if him in the champion spot is one of the ideal plays tonight, because, he doesn't even have to get that touchdown. He might get 8 catches for 86 yards and still be the ideal guy up there just because he saves a little bit of salary as well. And maybe, just maybe, T. Higgins, yes, he's going to have that higher ceiling, but Tyler Boyd's probably going to be the safer play overall, just depending on what type of build you're building for. If you're building for cash, if you're building for GPP, there's a lot of different ways that you can go about it tonight overall. Amari Cooper was sandwiched in between them. He is 8% projected in that champion spot. He's $7,600. He's a fairly reasonably priced player too. Obviously, you have some of that up and down history, as we know, with Amari Cooper throughout his entire career. But the highs are pretty high. He's got a healthy target share, so not too worried about him overall, honestly. I think he's a decent play if you want to squeeze him in there, just depending on how you're building your lineups. He's just a guy that fits in. If he fits in, if he doesn't, he doesn't. I don't think you'd think too much about it otherwise.
I personally love the Amari play. Just putting that out there. I think he's going to have a big game.
Yep. And then, like I said, if Awuzie is on him, I have a little bit more concerns. But if he doesn't end up on him for whatever reason, then could look really, really good tonight. So that's kind of a chance you take with DFS at any point in time.
And those two have practiced against each other before, so they kind of know the ins and outs a little bit more than your typical cornerback wide receiver matchup.
Yep. And I think what Awuzie wants to do, he's one of those guys that's pretty physical still, which you don't see a lot out of corners too. And the way Amari gets off the line and all his route running and stuff like that, it's still can create a pretty favorable matchup for him overall. Let's see. We get down to Kareem Hunt, who's $5,600, and he's kind of one of those guys, if you're playing in GPP, you want to be a little bit different, then you stick him in, because he really just hasn't done that much this year, or recently, I should say. The first couple of weeks were pretty good, and then it's just been a lot shift more to Nick Chubb. There's a lot of rumors that he's getting traded by the end of the day tomorrow. So maybe they use him a lot in this game. Maybe they don't use him at all. Like, there's a risk there too.
That's the fear I have, because I think he's the biggest trade candidate other than Greedy Williams on this team that people are after, and I think he could be moving.
I wonder if they would consider trading Amari Cooper too, just because, like, if they get more back than they trade away for him, like, because he could be valuable.
It wouldn't be hard. Christ. Why you got to bring that up? I'm a Cowboys fan, in case y'all don't know. That was...
Yep. I ain't even trying to do that, but that was a classic salary dump. We get down to Hayden Hurst. Hayden Hurst, like I already mentioned, with the linebacker situation, could have a pretty good game. Obviously, there's more targets available, even if the Bengals offense typically doesn't target the tight ends at a higher rate, but now you have 2 wide receivers instead of 3. No offense to Mike Thomas, who's going to be out there a lot, but you're Mike Thomas, not Michael Thomas. Get down to Donovan Peoples-Jones. He's the little guy that's interesting to me, just because he's one of those guys that he's just very back and forth where you bring this up. So he had 12, 11, 9, 12. So the past 3 weeks, he's been almost double digits. We got a 2 in there, a 0 in there, and a 12 as well. So when he gets the targets, he's typically good, but there's a couple of games in there where he hasn't gotten the targets. If he's going against the rookie corner, could be a pretty good spot for him. He's always liable to get a long touchdown. He's a very talented wide receiver. The fact that he went like in the 6th round was just kind of because Michigan can't develop wide receivers at all, but that's a whole nother story for a different day. And if he doesn't ever work out in football, he's going to be a doctor. So apparently his dad's a very famous doctor. So
good fallback.
Yep. So he's pretty interesting overall. Samaje Perine $4,800. When these backup like running backs that only play like 25-30% of the game, I'm really not super interested in them when they're this highly priced. No. Like, could he fall in the end zone, get a touchdown, pay off? Sure, but when you're looking at this other range, maybe you want to play a kicker and have McPherson or Cade York. Obviously, one was a rookie last year, one's a rookie this year. Do you want to go with the Bengals defense? We got Harrison Bryant here, right here at $4,000. I think more times than not, I'm going to play Harrison Bryant than Samaje Perine, but the rest of the field's probably thinking the same way too. Just going back because we had Donovan Peoples-Jones there, he's projected 3% in that champion spot. Hayden Hurst was 7%, which is a little bit much for me, especially when I did run my simulation earlier. He came in a lot lower than that. Kind of the spots that I was getting some leverage was Joe Mixon, oddly enough, even though he is pretty highly projected in terms of ownership. I was still getting a lot more of him. I was getting more of T. Higgins, who was also highly projected, and Amari Cooper. Those were the three that really popping for me. And then the guys that were kind of negatively correlated in the game script that I ran, Joe Burrow dropping about 4%, so he's coming in more at 12%. Nick Chubb was coming in more closer to 7 to 8% for me, and then Hayden Hurst was projected at 7. He was coming in closer to 2 or 3% for me. So that doesn't mean that he can't pay off. It's just the game script and all the inputs that I used on Run the Sims. So they have a do-it-yourself tool where it's very useful. You put in the projected score, what you think is going to happen, how many plays each team's going to have, how often you think they're going to run it, how often they run it, the percentage of the time that a touchdown is a rushing touchdown versus a passing touchdown. There's a lot that goes into it, but it's a very good tool overall, especially if you're trying to build different game scripts. You go through, you hit a button, you see a whole bunch of different lineups. You pick out the ones you like. If you want to go there, you can go through and sort by the captain spot. Like maybe I want to have Harrison Bryant in the captain spot so I can see all the lineups that have him as well. Without going too far down these rabbit holes, though, Browns defense, I'm not super interested in. If you want to be contrarian and play them at $3,800, you could. David Bell's $2,400. He's been playing more. He just really hasn't gotten targets. So maybe without David Njoku there, maybe you get some targets if you want to get a little bit different than a Harrison Bryant. Maybe they use 3 wide receiver sets just a little bit more, $2,400. I do like David Bell, the prospect, but just hadn't done too much this year overall. Let's see where we're at. So Mike Thomas, $1,200. He's probably going to be pretty popular just because he's expected to take the place of Jamar Chase. He's going to be out there for a lot of snaps, but does he get many targets? Doesn't need too much to pay off at $1,200 though. So that's the good and the bad with him. Mitchell Wilcox is the backup tight end for the Bengals. He's up to $800 now for whatever reason. If you want to get a little different, you could play him. Farrell Brown, we talked a little bit about in that injury report. He's $200. He's probably going to see the field quite a bit if he is active today. If he's not, you're probably going to look down to Miller Forrestall, who's down here a little bit. $200. If you want to take that dart throw, you can. Anthony Schwartz, I do not expect to be active today. He is a track star, not a football player. Let's put it that way. And I think they kind of realize that now. I guess Michael Woods was up there at $1,400. I like him quite a bit, but he just doesn't play enough to pay off at that price tag. So Schwartz probably going to be inactive. I think they kind of regret that decision, but Dearness Johnson mainly just playing special teams at this point in time. Demetric Fell mainly just playing special teams. Chris Evans, same way. So there's not too much else down here in terms of real cheap dart throw guys. Maybe you see one of these other wide receivers get called up from the practice squad for Cincinnati, whether it's Kwame Lassiter or Trent Irwin. I would assume that it'd be Trent Irwin. Trent Taylor's down here as well. He's going to play some snaps tonight, but he's a little 5'8" guy. Mainly plays slot and punt returns, so we'll see if he gets too involved, but he played about 20% of snaps last week. So he could fill in just a little bit, him and Mike Thomas. I want to just make sure none of those guys got called up from the practice squad already. Real quick while I'm at it. So I don't think we have any news about that yet. So sometimes that don't come out for about another hour and a half. It's usually closer to like 4 o'clock Eastern time, 3 o'clock Central time. But that's kind of what we got as an overview. There is about 70% aggregate ownership going to the Bengals side of this game for the champion spot. There's 29-30% towards Cleveland. A lot of times if I'm playing in GPPs, I like to get on the opposite side where everybody else isn't on. This happened last Monday night with the Bears and the Patriots. I got overexposed to the Bears because it's just like there's not that much there. If you want to be a little bit different in GPPs, that's a great way to do it right off the bat. The options for Cleveland, though, not too crazy about them. If I'm trying to get that, I'm probably going to Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Harrison Bryant. Maybe you do that Jacoby Brissett line and hope he kind of has that outlier game. But we can build a couple different lineups here. Typically, I like to start with probably one that's going to be more of a cash build, just so people have an idea of that going right off the bat. Obviously, the most projected guy in that champion spot is T. Higgins. Probably playing Joe Burrow along with him since he is the quarterback for him. You're probably going to see a Nick Chubb in there. You a lot of times in cash, you're going to get one of the kickers. Not sure that's going to be the case tonight because we have Harrison Bryant here at 4,000. But just building this out real quick, we have $12,200 left over. There's a lot of different ways you could do because I think Tyler Boyd's still probably going to be popular. You get $5,800 there. You could play a Kareem Hunt, but maybe you just do something like this in cash. You go T. Higgins, Joe Burrow, Nick Chubb, Harrison Bryant, Tyler Boyd, and Hayden Hurst. That's one way to do it. Wonder what it looks like with Mike Thomas. I don't know if Mike Thomas is going to be super popular in cash. You have $11,000 there. You could play Mixon too. So you could do T. Higgins, Joe Burrow, Nick Chubb, Harrison Bryant, Mike Thomas, and Joe Mixon. That could be a possible cash one. So trying to play something pretty safe overall in that case. $1,600. Could you do somebody else over? You just get up to like David Bell over Mike Thomas, and that's not really super enticing in cash builds. So you really like Joe Mixon tonight, correct?
Yes, sir.
So we can build one with Joe Mixon in the champion spot real quick. So he's 14,100 in the champion spot. A lot of times, if you're playing the running back, sometimes like you like the defense to go along with them. You think it'd be a good night for the Bengals defense?
I think so.
Yeah, so we'll play them. Would you still like to play Joe Burrow alongside? That's the question.
Yeah. Plug them in, see what's left, see what we got.
So typically, a lot of times, especially in GPPs, you're trying to build 5-1s or 4-2. So you're getting 5 from one team, 1 from the other team, 4 from the other team, 2 from the other team, because that's typically what wins the most. Sometimes you'll get some 3-3s that get high up there. It just depends on the game slate. There is expected to be points in this game, at least. Mm-hmm. So it's better than some of the other primetime games we've had so far this season. Sometimes those lower scoring ones is where you get the 3-3s, or you get double defense, double kicker, and like a running back. There was the one. I don't remember which Broncos game it was, but I was one player off that. Oh, it was Broncos Colts, because Alec Pierce ended up being the top champion play, and I had Mike Boone up there instead. So I was one player off. I had the exact same lineup otherwise. I had the exact same lineup otherwise. And it was only like a 4-point difference or something like that. So the guy that ended up winning the million had that Alec Pierce up there. But I think what you're looking at here, maybe you throw a Tyler Boyd in here at 64. I was
going to say, throw Boyd and Cooper in there and see what we got left.
Boyd and Cooper. Yeah, we have $6,300. So you're looking at like a Kareem Hunt. You're looking at like a Hayden Hurst, Donovan Peoples-Jones, a kicker. So I know you're not super into DFS, but a lot of times people think you have to use all the salary. One of the ways to get different is to not use all the salary. So even if we put like an Evan McPherson in here and we left $1,700 on the table, that's a way to get different, because most people are going to see the $6,300 and they're going to be like, well, I got to use as much of it as possible and throw Kareem Hunt in there.
So you're getting a more unique lineup.
Yep. Or throw Hayden Hurst in there or whatever. But I don't mind the Hunt either there, because so many people are going to be on Chubb tonight. So if it just happens to break Kareem Hunt's way where he gets the touchdowns, that's not too bad either. Or Amari Cooper gets the touchdowns and they're kind of playing from behind. There's a lot of different ways that could work out as well. Mm-hmm. Do you have a preference here at the end?
I think you're right on the Kareem Hunt call there. Yeah, just for all the reasons you said, there's a lot of ways that this could break, that the points from the Browns side are going to be funneled through those two guys. Because if their focus is going to be on stopping Chubb and that, then it's going to open up a lot for the other guys.
Especially if they can get out ahead early. Even though Kareem Hunt hasn't been like super involved lately, but that part of that might just be the offensive line. So that is one potential one that we could do there. I know we got a couple different people in here now, so if you guys have any questions regarding this slate for tonight, feel free to leave them, and we'll get to them as quickly as possible. I like getting to some of that Brown side that's not super popular. Maybe that's you putting Kareem Hunt in the champion spot at 2%. I kind of like this idea of going down here. We're going to play Harrison Bryant. He's super cheap. He's $6,000 in the champion spot, and then we can kind of build around that. So we're going back to the flex spot. Typically, if you play that pass catcher, you like to bring the quarterback alongside him. Do you have to do that tonight with Jacoby Brissett? Probably not, but we're still going to do it anyways. Probably still play like Joe Burrow. We can still play some popular guys here like T. Higgins because we already got this champion spot so different.
Right.
And now it's kind of like, what's that last kind of piece that you want to put in there? Is it like an Amari Cooper and Tyler Boyd?
Let's go 3-3.
Could do that, or because we got the Browns there, we could do like a Donovan Peoples-Jones, and then you could do Nick Chubb there too as well. So we'd still have Harrison Bryant, who's different in the champion spot. We have his quarterback with him. Nick Chubb still having a decent game. Peoples-Jones catches a long pass, and Joe Burrow and T. Higgins are just kind of doing their thing. But with the money you saved with Harrison Bryant, it kind of adds out that way. There's a lot of different ways you can build these lineups, and that's kind of just something that I try to like focus on for people in general. So we could do, I like building these quarterback ones out real quick too. So maybe we're putting Joe Burrow in the champion spot. Obviously, he's going to be pretty popular there. Do we want to play Tyler or T. Higgins with him? Or do we just kind of go down to like a Tyler Boyd, saying he's going to have a good game? Hayden Hurst. Usually I like to pair the kicker in this situation. So we got 4 from the Cincinnati side right away. You could still play the guy that you know is going to get some volume in like a Nick Chubb. And then what you have left over, $6,300, you can kind of plug and play from there. Or if you want to take Nick Chubb off the table and you put Amari Cooper, then you have $9,100. You could still play T. Higgins if you really want to. Then you could have the 3 pass catchers, the 1 kicker, and then kind of your safer play on the Brown side at least. Now we'll do the Jacoby Brissett captain line just because. So if he's getting there, you got Donovan Peoples-Jones, Amari Cooper, and Harrison Bryant. 2 of those 3 are probably going along with him. And if Jacoby Brissett's getting there in the champion spot, it means he's throwing touchdowns to multiple people. So do you want to play all 3 of them together? That's definitely something you could do. With Amari Cooper, you could play Donovan Peoples-Jones, and then Harrison Bryant, wherever the heck he went. 4,000 there. Yep. And then in this case, you could still play Joe Burrow. You could still play T. Higgins alongside this, and you have $200 left over. So maybe not quite as a unique line just because you have the $200 left over. It's closer to the maximum salary, but we're still only got projected 4% ownership for Jacoby Brissett in the champion spot. So even if you're competing with 4% of people, this still might be a different 4% than they're playing as well. Maybe we take out Amari Cooper and we put in Nick Chubb in this case too. Saying he's still going to have a decent game because Jacoby Brissett's throwing a couple touchdowns early. Nick Chubb's running the ball out late. We could still put a Joe Burrow in there. Then we'd have to go down to like a Hayden Hurst or something. Can do that as well. So a couple different ways that you can build these out.
So in this case, Awuzie is just shutting down Coop.
Yep. And then those linebackers, Deion Jones still getting his feet wet. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah that probably doesn't play or something. Like there's a lot of different ways, and it will mix it up just depending on the inactives. If somebody gets elevated from the practice squad, that makes them look better. Definitely a lot of different ways you could do it. You could get real creative. So I know I have somebody that watches from time to time that likes seeing like the super cheap play in the champion spot. So we'll put Mike Thomas up there because he's probably like the best cheap play. And then you throw in Joe Burrow. I don't know if you have to go this route tonight just because we got Nick Chubb. We could probably put Jacoby Brissett. I don't know if you can put Jacoby Brissett in that case. We'll just put Mixon in there. We'll put T. Higgins just as a start. So we're putting all like the expensive guys up there. So we got Joe Burrow, Nick Chubb, Joe Mixon, T. Higgins, and then you put like Amari Cooper here if that's something you want to do. You could put Tyler Boyd if that's something you want to do. couple different ways if you're trying to put that up there. Probably put Amari Cooper in this one just because we already got Mike Thomas up here. So if he's doing well, T. Higgins or Tyler Boyd's probably not the other one doing well.
Right.
But that's one way to do it. I'm trying to think if there's any other specific. I'm going to Donovan Peoples-Jones. Just because he's only projected for 3%, if he gets that kind of break-off game like he has had before in the past, not quite as much this year with Jacoby Brissett. His ceiling's kind of been that 12 points. But last year, you remember that one week where he had like 20 points and then everybody went to pick him up the next week and then he did nothing the next week? Yep. Point chasing is very real in fantasy football. So if we have him there, we're probably going to play Jacoby Brissett as well. Maybe you're playing Joe Burrow here. Maybe you just want to be a little bit different and like make this one super different and play Joe Mixon alongside as well. Maybe you're still playing a Nick Chubb here. And then we're kind of going from there. Maybe you're just playing Tyler Boyd because he's kind of safe as well. But he's getting the catches and Joe Burrow's not having that crazy game or anything like that. That gives you $7,100. You could do a lot of different things there and leave a lot of money on the table as well. So lots of different strategies for this one tonight. Money does not seem to be a problem because of the pricing being factored in for Jamar Chase, and he's not playing. But that's kind of what I got for right now. Is there any other build you like to build right now?
No, I think you've pretty much covered anything. What's like the absolute craziest lineup you could build, like the moonshot of lineups? I would like to see what that looks like.
Like we do like a Bengals DST champion or something, and then do like a Joe Mixon. I don't even know. Like for this one, it's a little bit harder slate, or it's probably like maybe it's a Kareem Hunt champion spot. Probably the least likely one to hit tonight would be like Kareem Hunt champion, like play both defenses or something like that.
Or like Browns D is champion, because I think that's a little less likely to be happening.
So play both these defenses, play like a Joe Mixon, Tyler Boyd just because he's safe. Probably play like a Amari Cooper. I think how did Brissett get in there? We didn't even want him. Something like, I guess we got Kareem Hunt in there, so we probably don't need Nick Chubb. Maybe Amari Cooper. That's kind of like where I'm at. But this is like leaving $10,000 on the table, so it'd be like Kareem Hunt in the champion spot, saying he's getting a couple touchdowns. The defenses get a couple scores. Joe Mixon gets a score, and then Cooper and Boyd just kind of do their normal thing, but don't really score. Like that'd be something kind of crazy. Or I feel like even like when we talk about the Jacoby Brissett one, like him throwing 3 touchdowns or something, and not having one of his pass catching options is pretty unrealistic or improbable. Not unrealistic. It could happen. He's had a 4 touchdown game, unfortunately, against my Texans like a couple of years back. I was driving through Michigan, listening to the game on the radio, and I'm just like,
oh, no.
Nice. So it's happened. It's not very pretty, but it happened. But that's pretty much what we got for right now. If anybody has any questions, feel free to leave it down in the comments. If you're watching this on replay, you got any other questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments or message me on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport. Obviously did this stream a little bit earlier today since it's Halloween and all that stuff, you know. Got to take the kids trick-or-treating and all that, you know. But it worked out pretty well.
All their candy.
I ain't that mean. I might get kicked if I do that, but that's a whole other story for a different day. But definitely appreciate everybody that did tune in today. If you're watching this on replay, I appreciate you checking it out as well. Hopefully you guys have some pretty good lineups tonight. Hopefully it all works out for you in your favor. And definitely check out the Thursday night stream as well, which should be the normal time unless something crazy happens.
Well, we can't have another Halloween. Or
well,
can we?
Can we? Hey, I don't know. But once again, this worked out pretty well. We were obviously able to get Mr. Smoky Hill on here. So anything else you want to say before we get out of here?
Nah, go get yourself some money. But first put in your bets. And then go get the candy. And then get the money. And then get the khakis. And then you get the girls. That's all I got. You all have yourselves a great Halloween.
Yep. So we're going to get out of here. Definitely appreciate everybody that did tune in once again. If you're watching our replay, I appreciate you checking it out as well.